Hello and welcome to another episode of Train Lee Installations. Today I am reviewing this LGB Mogul, a 2019 S originally, that I upgraded with a Zimo decoder. I'm going to take a couple of seconds here and show you a slideshow, but explain to you part of what happens when I do a installation. Because there was some concerns about wires and so on in the locomotive. I remove all of the original wires out of the original board out of the locomotive. I have since designed and 3D printed a mount, and this is kind of generic for a lot of the locomotives that I use. This replaces the original board of the mogul that is installed inside the bulkhead right here of that, and then what gets mounted on that, and this is using a Zimo decoder. This is an MS 950 series decoder. The decoder is actually mounted on a little board, a locomotive adapter board. That's the board. This is mounted onto the board, which is then mounted inside the locomotive. And then the wires, appropriate wires, are soldered to the adapter board in the correct locations. And I'm going to go ahead and show you a couple of different, a slideshow with the different pictures and how the decoder is mounted in there. Welcome back after watching this slideshow, and hopefully that helps explain some things. I also, for a lot of the locomotives, I then program and customize the sound projects specific to the locomotive. Some of the sound projects were written for an older style decoder using older methods in programming, and I basically will go through it and update that sound project, rearrange sound functions and light functions, and program it specific to the locomotive. I do have some generic ones that I can send with the decoder that have been customized. I also have some in-house designed sound projects that I've completely written. I take time and rewrite all of these projects and program them. While I'm programming it, I program it with the number that is on the side of the cab as the new DCC address. When I'm programming it this way, I am uploading that new program to the decoder, so that it allows you to go ahead and reset that locomotive as needed. I try to standardize the sound functions. I don't always get it exactly the same, but mostly they're pretty close. I use things like the F8 key as turning on and off the sound of the locomotive. I use F1 as the bell, and F2 and 3 is usually one of the other couple whistles. F4 I oftentimes will program it with the shunting mode. If the locomotive has a cab light, I program it to work with the lights, so it's turned on. I try to simplify the features for the end user's usability, rather than programming all these features as separate function keys. So I'm going to go ahead and review it. Of course, as I just said, F8 turns on the sound. Well, the sound project isn't real special. F0 turns on the headlight. And I'm using my MX33, Zimo MX33 cab to control the locomotive. So F1 is my bell. I'm going to plug it back in because its battery is low. Now we can turn F1 off. F2 is the short whistle. F3 is a long whistle. F4 is the highway crossing whistle in this case. I'm going to go ahead and, before I send this locomotive back to the customer, I'm going to go ahead and change the programming a little bit because I have F5 currently assigned to the function out5 for a cab light, but I didn't put a cab light in this locomotive. F6 would turn on the smoke. For some reason, it is not activating right now. It did earlier. I'll have to double check why it's not turning on. So F8, F7 is what Zimo originally called as the water outlet. And that is opening the cylinder valves. Now, with steam engines, they would have to do this because what happens is steam recondenses as it is into water, and the water will get caught up in the cylinders on the locomotive, and if they have too much water in there, it's just not going to work. So they have to open those valves to let out the extra water, and it pushes some extra steam out as well. And then there's the cornering squeal or flange squeal, and this is just the default flange squeal. That's F9, but I set it up so that it only plays with movement. Now, Heinz-Stappen originally designed the Mogul sound project. I've only updated it for the MS series decoders in this case. I additionally added some volume controls, F10 and 11. F10 increases the volume and F11 decreases the volume. You have to be careful with F11 because it can decrease the volume all the way to 0 and you won't be able to hear the sound. Even if you turn it on and off a couple times, it will just stay there. It also stays there when you put it back on the tracks. If you take it off the tracks for a while, it just keeps that programming. So you have to make sure you don't turn it all the way down. Or if you do, remember that that's what you did. F12 is the coal shoveling. And that plays that sound. You can't see it from this angle, but what happens is this has a flickering firebox, and that firebox only flickers when that sound is played. That sound is also it can be manually played, or it is also a random sound that'll play whenever based off of a time whenever it gets to that random generator. Let's see, F13, which is actually playing that sound that you just heard. Oh, now it's playing a different sound. Some of those sounds are random. Okay, there we go. F13 is effectively blowing air into the boiler. With a pulsed smoke generator, it'll blow, and that smoke generator being on, it'll blow extra smoke out of that generator. And then you have, let's see. Oh, and then you have F14, which turns off the automatic brake squeal. That's when you come to a stop. Let's see, I just activated it. Oh, I still have the flange squeal on. I'll turn that off. So I've turned the brake squeal off. I'll go ahead and turn it back on. Sometimes it'll play it based off of speed and motion on the brake squeal. Let's see, F15 is what's referenced as full power coasting. In other words, you can give it a whole bunch of power, set the throttle at whatever speed, and then when you hit full power coasting, it sounds like the locomotive is coasting and not actually chuff working really hard. And then you have F16, which is a conductor.
All aboard.
F17 is the safety valve. Those activate when you have too much steam pressure in the boiler. Most of the steam is built up in the steam dome, and the safety valve is right on one of these little valves on top. And it's set to go off at whatever pressure is above the maximum pressure, or it's set at a maximum pressure for safety. So you don't build up so much steam that the whole thing blows up. The injector, which is, let's see what that one, it's injecting water into the boiler. And then you have a couple of different, you have an air pump, the fast air pump. That's the fast air pump. It plays both the fast and the slow air pumps at random times. And then you have putting water or adding water into the tender, which is F20. And then you have, let's see, F21. So when they're running, after a while, they do have to do what they reference as blowing down the cylinders or blowing down the extra steam, because there's oil and stuff that gets built up into there, and they blow that down, blowing out the excess oil and so on. Let's see. And then you have F22, which is a coupler crash. And that is all of the functions on this particular locomotive. And I hope that this was somewhat informative of how I install them. Oh, and then one final note, I should say, is that with the 2019S, it is what I refer to as a 3-wire or a 3-pin motor block. I have to modify those. And then I show some of that in this slideshow, and the way I modify it is that I maintain LGB's serviceability with it. So again, I hope this was informative. Thank you for watching. I'm Christine McNary, and I did this installation.